morning and welcome to Rising. It is Tuesday morning. You know what I've realized about Tuesday? It is the worst day for traffic in D.C.
Oh, you're not the only one who thinks that. I had an elevator conversation along those lines. I don't travel very far to get to work, so I don't feel like I have a lot of credibility to weigh in. But it was a longer than average 3/4 of a mile journey.
Yeah, I'm not complaining too much. I also don't have a long way to go. It's like, 10 minutes versus 20 minutes, but Tuesday is markedly worse than other days, unfortunately. But that is not deterring the wonderful show we have to bring you all today. Take it away, Briahna.
That's right. Tuesday is Great News Day, and it is primary day in New Hampshire. Voters have already begun lining up at the polls to cast their ballots for 2024. All eyes are on former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley and former President Donald Trump, who are the two remaining Republican candidates on the presidential ballot. According to Monmouth University polling released yesterday, Trump is squarely in the lead with 52% of voter support. Haley trails behind at 34%.
Now, Trump is leading the pack on the national stage as well. New Harvard-Harris polling finds that Trump is leading in a hypothetical general election matchup against Biden, leading by a whopping 6 points. Now, when you add in Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to the ballot, the lead grows to 8 points over Biden. RFK Jr. himself is taking 21% of the general electorate numbers, which are massive. Now, President Biden will not appear on the New Hampshire ballot today. Obviously, we'll get more into the Democratic primary in just a bit. But first, Briahna, take a look at those numbers. Actually, I think the RFK Jr. number it might be the one our viewers are most interested in. Again, we're calling to mind, we're summoning Ross Perot vibes here. The last time we had a third-party challenger doing that well. But also the general, and you have to take the general numbers with a grain of salt. The numbers in the swing states are what really matter, although those all have Trump up even more so over Biden. Right now, if the election were held now, Trump would win.
Yeah, I mean,
there's no way around it.
And that is the story, and that's, let's be frank, likely to be the outcome. But I do think in some ways the story here is about the bizarre and perhaps anticipated rise of Nikki Haley. I'm looking at the 538 polls over time since around April. And it's difficult to imagine that scenario where you had Ron DeSantis polling in the mid-30s. Trump has been pretty consistent, although he has gained from opening at the mid-40s to obviously being where he is now. And then you have this whole other cast of characters, including up-and-comers like Vivek Ramaswamy, that seemed like really promising quantities. And it wasn't until we got into the debates that I think we really started to see Nikki Haley surprise folks with, frankly, how sort of cogent and professional and confident she seemed on stage. And that's when she started to pull away. And frankly, I'm still kind of stunned by the fact that she's the last one standing. Now, this is not a substantive commentary on her politics. Obviously, she is getting a big boost from the fact that she's representing a more establishment wing of the Republican Party. Even so, though, putting up these kind of numbers against Donald Trump, it's interesting. And I do wonder how she is going to interpret the outcome here in New Hampshire. It's obviously not going to be a win, but is she going to try to flip this into a kind of a confidence vote for upcoming states?
Yeah, her ideology, her mannerisms, are very well tailored to the state of New Hampshire, where there's a large number of independent voters, moderate voters. She has the support of the moderate Republican governor of the state and of neighboring states. Talking about the Northeast, which has a long history of fondness politically for socially moderate Republican governors. Frankly, that's what Mitt Romney started out as at one point. Remember that John McCain, who was the 2008 nominee, he got the nomination after a big win in New Hampshire. I bring that up because Nikki Haley, frankly, is similar to John McCain in a lot of ways in terms of her ideology and her temperament, obviously being most... Well, what would have been at the John McCain time is not, it would have been most conservative then. I don't know, now that term doesn't have as much meaning for foreign policy, but very hawkish the way John McCain was, but then perceived to be softer, more moderate, more accepting to, more friendly to independence than some of the religious conservatives, remember, which John McCain used to fight with. So if you look at it that way, I don't think it's particularly surprising that she's doing well, particularly in New Hampshire. But yes, you're right. She obviously performed well on the debate stage. People got to hear more from her. They found something appealing about her. She is, unlike Vivek and DeSantis, extremely and sufficiently differentiated from Trump that she could maybe actually capitalize on the not Trump vote in the Republican Party, which is a smaller chunk of the party, but is not insignificant.
Yeah,
And,
I mean, look, I get that you're being a non-interventionist for libertarian reasons, me being a non-interventionist for leftist humanitarian reasons. Neither of us agrees with Nikki Haley, and I think both of us, if we had to choose, are more inclined to at least be sympathetic to some of the protectionist instincts of more of a Donald Trump character. But I don't know why we can't just appreciate that. I think it's not surprising that she does well in New Hampshire because of the politics in New Hampshire. No. She's the only one left standing. That is, I'm sorry, in some ways, the big story here. I never in a million years would have imagined that Ron DeSantis dropped out of the race after Iowa. That Vivek Ramaswamy, after all of the ink that was spilled on his rise, was going to be out at this juncture. And I do really think it says something about the kind of lack of oxygen in the room for any Trump alternatives at this juncture. And it's really stunning to watch. And I do wonder what is going to happen as we get closer to the election if there are these kinds of shakeups with Donald Trump's legal cases, if the fact of him coming back onto the national stage, he's been off Twitter, he's been a little bit sidelined, the mainstream media has decided we're not going to air his speeches, we are going to kind of put him in the box. I was listening to Pod Save America actually the other day, which is a liberal centrist kind of Obama era podcast. And even they were criticizing the mainstream liberal media for not showing more Trump, because I think increasingly people are coming to the realization that perhaps the voters need to be reminded about what they don't like about him. And if that starts to happen and people start reacting to the kind of chaos is the word Nikki Haley's been using, but the chaos that sometimes follows Trump, I do wonder if we're seeing not her bottoming out here, or her peaking rather, but if there is really a trajectory that might emerge over the next few months.
And to be clear, I don't think the media should show more Trump speeches because they have some duty to defeat him, but just because that should be journalistic standard practice.
Yeah.
The ostensible reason they're not doing it is because they think it's harmful for democracy, or it spreads too much information, which is the stupidest reason, the worst reason of all.
Yeah.
So, but it's having the potentially ancillary effect of making Trump more popular because people forget his antics.
What do you think about the RFK Jr. of it all? There was a time when it seemed like Republicans were very interested in him. The Republican media, I should say, was giving him a bit of a platform. Then it was ambiguous whether or not he was hurting Biden or hurting Trump, and it seemed like there was a bit of a flip on him. Now it shows, these polls seem to indicate that he creates a widening gap between Donald Trump that is in his advantage. Yeah. Do you expect to see more Fox News town halls, more Twitter spaces, more platforming of RFK Jr. Now that he's an independent?
Yeah, I mean, it's important to note he seems to be hurting Biden a little bit more than Trump, given that polling breakdown, which maybe actually is counterintuitive because I think there is some overlap between his base and Trump people. But even if he's not in there, you can't make the case that, I'm sure some Biden surrogate people are making that case now and will be if he loses.
Oh, yeah.
But take him out. Trump is still well ahead.
Yeah.
So you cannot say that, it's the anti-Trump vote is getting split and that's why Biden's screwed. That is not at all what the polls are telling us.
And it's even worse when you look at the state-by-state polls as opposed to the national polls. I mean, Biden has his own set of problems, especially in states like Michigan, where so many Arab and Muslim American voters are just inconsolable and are saying, I don't even care if he switches course at this point. I've lost too many family members in Gaza. It's been too bad. And I don't know how he's going to dig himself out of that particular hole.
I did look at the polling results. So there was then another poll that also put in, I think, Jill Stein and some other third-party candidate, Cornel West, and that brought down the RFK number just slightly. So some of those third-party people. So there are people out there who are really sick of the two-party system and are, as different on some issues as an RFK Jr. and a Jill Stein and Cornel West would be, are done with the two parties and the failure they have visited upon us and are exploring
interestingly, Andrew Yang, who was kind of trying to start something new with the Forward Party. He recently endorsed Dean Phillips, who is the other Democratic Party candidate, in addition to obviously Biden and Marianne Williamson. So weird realignments are happening right now. Why he would endorse a Democrat running as opposed to maybe throwing his lot in with RFK Jr., one of these other third-party efforts. But we'll get more into that and what's going on the Democratic side of the aisle in an upcoming segment. So stick around. We're rising after this.